A rope which was used for the execution of Saddam Hussein in 2006 for crimes against humanity is now a much valued item among online bidders. But the auction has sparked criticism from human rights activists. Our UK correspondent Isa Ali has the details.
Well, this auction, according to a report in the Arabic paper Al Jadid Al Arabi, states that a bid has been put in, or several bids have been put in, numbering in the region of about $7 million, $7 million US dollars. And some of those who have bid for this rope include a wealthy Israeli family, two Kuwaiti businessmen, a bank, and an Iranian religious organization or foundation who presumably would want to display this rope in a museum of some sort. Now, all of those countries, of course, in some way, shape or form, were involved in a conflict with Saddam. Of course, the Iranians losing 1 million men when Saddam waged what turned out to be an 8-year war against them. So, real interest there. Now, the person putting this up for auction is Dr. Muaffaq Rabei, who was the Iraqi National Security Advisor when the Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein was executed. And he was actually in the gallows at the time when Saddam was hung, and he was one of the ones leading the back and forth with Saddam and his executioners. And he states that at the time of the execution, he told the men under his command to bring him the rope, and ever since then it's been kept in his home in Baghdad. And due to the security situation, he says there is no museum in Baghdad which could safely hold it, so he's put it for sale. So he's now going to get maybe $7 million, maybe even more, because the bidding isn't over. But it's important to note that he hasn't confirmed or denied that he will be selling it for more than that.
Political analyst Khaleb Mupen thinks that the auction shows the Iraqi government's corruption and lack of principles.
The fact that the rope is now on sale is just a further confirmation of the fact that the execution of Saddam Hussein had nothing to do with justice. Rather, it was about profits. This just shows how cheap justice has become when they're selling the implements of execution for sale, when they're put up for bid. I mean, profits really dominate everything. Nothing is really sacred. Well, the whole notion of auctioning off the implements for execution is really, really perverse. The government that has been put in place by the U.S. invasion is so corrupt that the very implements used to execute Saddam Hussein are up for sale on the internet.
Stories online for you just now. A story of a Siberian skier who unexpectedly found himself plunging into the world's deepest freshwater lake, the Baikal. Now, the incident was caught by his own action camera when he was skiing on ice that looked thick enough to hold his weight. Luckily, a friend was there to help him. Get the full story online. Also there for you, you might be surprised to discover that New York's subway, well, it's home to unstudied microorganisms and bacteria that could cause serious illnesses. Head to RT.com to discover what was found exactly on the subway that is used by millions of people. The deadly unrest in Libya seems to see no end as government and various opposition factions continue to scramble for power. That's as one of the members of parliament there offers his own solution to the country's problems. Mohamed Abdelaziz, who's a special ambassador to the president of the Libyan parliament, he's called for the restoration of the constitutional monarchy, saying that it would be the best decision for the country. He also accused foreign powers of interference.
As for sponsoring the insurgency, let me be honest with you. Foreign interference in Libyan affairs is a fact. There is no need to point to specific states, but there are a number of states that aid certain insurgent groups for ideological and political reasons. And those groups, in turn, uphold a certain ideology.
Many say that if the monarchy does return, the point of revolution disappears. They say it wouldn't be any different than the rule of ousted dictator Muammar Gaddafi, who was often referred to as a king. Being the sole leader of the country, the rule of Colonel Gaddafi was not much different from a monarchy. It was even reported that the toppled dictator wanted to eventually proclaim himself king. Now, we spoke to Lawrence Freeman from the Executive Intelligence Review magazine. He said that despite the role of Gaddafi, what's happening in Libya now is the direct consequences of Western interference.
The regime was overthrown by the U.S. and Britain leading, and the consequences have been rather disastrous. Gaddafi was a mixed bag. He did some things that were very bad, and he did some things that were useful for Africa. But the fact is that it's now come out recently in the U.S. press that the policy of the United States government towards Libya was regime change. Two things have to happen to enable Libya to recover. One is we have to identify those forces, British, American, Saudi forces, that conspired to overthrow in this regime change policy. Number two is we have to work with the BRIC countries and other countries around the world to actually develop coherent economic programs.
It's a call to worship that was just too loud to ignore. These are the church bells in the Austrian city of Linz. The ear-splitting peal, it rings out every 15 minutes throughout the night. It's prompted a local citizen to beseech Pope Francis to step in. According to a local solicitor, the bells ring more than 200 times every night and keep everyone awake. A spokesman from his legal team says they are defending people's right to a peaceful night's sleep.
We wouldn't like to act against the church itself or against a religion in any way. So we respect the church and acknowledge the right to practice one's religion. But in this sense, we also would like the church to acknowledge the right of our client or just anyone else to have a peaceful sleep. Our client has been trying to achieve this solution for almost 2 years, or actually over 2 years, but with no results. So for this reason, he was actually forced to put this case before the court.
Dozens of dead dolphins and whales have been washed ashore in Scotland. Environmentalists blame a military operation to detect a suspected Russian submarine. However, they stated that the animals' bodies were so badly decomposed it was hard to know for sure. Investigative journalist Tony Gosling says that operations like this are an embarrassment for the security services.
The whales are not getting a look in and are being killed in quite large numbers here, in a completely outrageous that they can somehow spin that, oh, this was all because of some kind of Russian submarine. Maybe they're testing out their ability to kill whales. What if they're just practicing using some kind of weapon up there? Have they got some kind of nasty killer sonar that is bringing all these fish in? It just smacks to me of incompetence by the Navy.
The search for mysterious Russian submarines is not confined to Scotland. Sweden also carried out several massive operations that failed to find any evidence of a sub. Investigative journalist Tony Gosling again says it's just all about scaremongering.
If you're telling me that you've got Russian submarines disappearing under your, into your water, you need to show us some evidence. And there's not good enough anymore to just say, oh, it's all national security, because particularly in this case, nothing has been found. It's been the hunt for Red October, and all it's turned out is a few dead whales. It's a pathetic performance by the military psychological warfare people.
Barack Obama has released an updated national security strategy outlining his foreign policy priorities for the final 2 years of his presidency. In the document, he highlights America's indispensable global leadership, but also admits that the country's resources and influence are not infinite. Larry Johnson, who's a former CIA and State Department official, says the document doesn't really reflect America's top priorities.
You read through the strategic document, or this document outlining so-called strategy, and there's no strategy. There's no real prioritization. They talk about their global leadership, and yet what the United States is doing for global leadership is bent on provoking a confrontation with Russia, it would appear to me. When you take the provocative step of wanting to arm Ukraine, the government of the Ukraine, that is not a recipe of world leadership and peace. You know, it's tough to lead the world to peace when you can't even figure out who the enemy is. That's part of the problem. I look at this document. This was produced entirely for U.S. domestic political consumption. It has no relevance to the rest of the people in the world.
Coming up on RT International, Erin Aid breaks down the financial headlines in boom bust. And if you're watching us in the UK, it's the latest Sputnik with George Galloway.